We ought to reach some place where men dwell before long, else we shall be obliged to spend the night among these rocks."
"And then, perhaps, the wolves will attack us," said Nerle, cheerfully, "and tear us into pieces with their sharp teeth and claws." But even as he spoke they rode around a turn in the path and saw a sight that made them pause in astonishment, for just before them rose the castle of King Terribus, and along both sides of the marble walk leading up to it were ranged the lines of giants, exactly as they had stood in the morning. Nerle turned around in his saddle. Sure enough, there were the Gray Men in the rear, stepping from behind every boulder and completely filling the rocky pathway. "Well, what shall we do?" asked the esquire. "Fight?"
"No, indeed," returned Prince Marvel, laughing at his friend's eager face. "It appears the path we chose winds around in a circle, and so has brought us back to our starting point. So we must make the best of a bad blunder and spend another night with our ugly friend, King Terribus."
They rode forward through the rows of giants to the castle, where the ever courteous servants took their horses and escorted them to their former handsome apartments with every mark of respect. No one seemed in the least surprised at their speedy return, and this fact at first puzzled Nerle and then made him suspicious. After bathing and dusting their clothing, they descended to the banquet hall, where King Terribus sat upon his gray stone throne and welcomed them with quiet courtesy. The sight of the king's crimson skin and deformed face sent a thrill of repugnance through Prince Marvel, and under the impulse of a sudden thought he extended his hand toward Terribus and whispered a magic word which was unheard by any around him. Nerle did not notice the prince's swift gesture nor the whispered word, but he was staring straight at Terribus at the time, and he saw with surprise the eye on the top of the king's head move down toward his forehead, and the eye in the center of his forehead slide slightly toward the left, and the elephant-like nose shrink and shorten at the same time. Also, it seemed to him that the king's skin was not so crimson in color as before, and that a thin growth of hair had covered his head. However, no one else appeared to notice any change, least of all Terribus, so Nerle seated himself at the table and began to eat.
"It was very kind of you to return so soon to my poor castle," said the king to Prince Marvel in his sweet voice. "We could not help it," laughed the prince in reply, "for the road wound right and left until we knew not which way we traveled, and then it finally circled around again to your castle. But tomorrow we shall seek a new path and bid you farewell forever." "Still," remarked the king, gravely, "should you again miss your way, I shall be glad to welcome your return." The prince bowed politely by way of reply, and turned to address the little maiden he had once saved from death by poison. And so, in feasting and dancing and laughter, the evening passed pleasantly enough to the prince, and it was late when he called Nerle to attend him to their apartment. End chapter 11. The story will continue on the next recording.